what's up? Sinisa Superbad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the Relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking Relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, it appears that Scotland's own boxing bassoonist, Hannah Rankin, this fall in November on the 5th, is going to be fighting, forget this, the WBA junior middleweight title. And it's not just anybody's WBA junior middleweight title, it's Claressa Shields' old WBA junior middleweight title. That's right. A trip over to the WBA's ranked standings on their website reveals that the WBA title is now listed as vacant, and Scotland's own boxing bassoonist, Hannah Rankin, is going to be fighting for it against an opponent that has yet to be announced.
This means Claressa's not undisputed anymore.
Not at 154 pounds and not at 160. And in truth, it's only right because Claressa appears to be spending the rest of this year in the octagon, not the boxing ring. And she's been holding world titles at both of those weights, 154 and 160, for a while now, depriving other girls of the opportunity to fight for them because she's preoccupied with a new discipline. So
They're going to have to free up some of those titles.
I'm a little bit surprised that it's the junior middleweight version of the title that has become vacant, it being that Claressa Shields procured that version of the title more recently than the one she's still holding at 160 pounds. Claressa Shields won the junior middleweight version of the title earlier this year, in March, in the Marie-Eve Dicaire fight, whereas the one she holds, the one she's still holding up there at middleweight,
She won that one 3 years ago.
in June of 2018, up there at 160 pounds, and she hasn't boxed at 160 pounds in roughly 2 years.
Since the Christina Hammer fight.
In April of 2019, and that being said, I expected that it would be the middleweight versions of those titles that would go vacant, not the junior middleweight versions of those titles, because Shields very recently boxed at junior middleweight. As it stands, it's the junior middleweight version of the WBA title that's gone vacant. It's the junior middleweight version of the title that Hannah Rankin is going to be fighting for very soon. And just like that, the landscape is starting to change.
I think pretty soon all of those titles are going to go vacant.
All the titles Claressa Shields very recently won at 154 pounds. I think she'll hang on to the ones at 160 because she's going to need those titles. She's going to need to be able to bring those titles to the table if and when she locks horns with Savannah Marshall, which I don't expect to happen this year, though I think it could happen next year. That would make the fight between them an undisputed middleweight title fight. I reiterate, who it is Hannah Rankin is going to be boxing for that WBA title in November is anybody's guess. The opponent hasn't been announced yet, but this is a very big moment for Hannah Rankin. This is her shot at becoming a full-fledged world champion, and that's set to go down this fall. Keep your eyes peeled for that, but that's
Not all.
It's not all. At least according to the WBA's website. The WBO title at 168 pounds, the super middleweight division. At least according to the WBA, the WBO title at that same weight is currently vacant. The WBO title that Franchon Cruz was in possession of. I'm not sure what to make of this because I cross-referenced what we see in the WBA's rank standings with what we see in the WBO's very own rank standings, and according to the WBO, she's still their reigning super middleweight champion.
According to them.
But the WBO isn't exactly Johnny on the spot when it comes to updating their women's rank standings. Quite honestly, they have no women's rank standings.
They don't have any.
They only rank their female champions, and you can find the names of those champions in the men's rank standings. And as far as what they have there, they still have Franchon Cruz registered as their reigning WBO champion, though that could be because they haven't updated their rank standings yet. What will August's rank standings reveal once those ranks are out? Because as far as what the WBA's saying,
They update their ranks more regularly than the WBO does.
they're saying that the WBO title is vacant. I'm not sure what to make of that. I see where that could have happened because, Franchon Cruz hasn't been all that active and she hasn't satisfied any mandatories for the WBO, but then again, none were ordered. Does this mean that her upcoming fight with Aline Cedar-Ruz, whenever that gets rescheduled, does this mean that that won't be an undisputed title fight? Did the WBO...
Did they strip her?
You know that Christina Hammer, the former unified middleweight champion, her Olympic journey, her Olympic run has come to an abrupt end. She didn't make it into the games. And it looks a lot like she's preparing for a ring return. Wouldn't surprise me at all if when she returns to the pro ranks, she campaigns in the super middleweight division. And if this title at 168 pounds really has gone vacant, well, she'd be right on time. Swing by and pick it up.
Is that what's going on here?
Well, I don't know. I don't want to jump to conclusions. I'm just telling you. As far as the WBA's website, they have the WBO title at this weight registered as vacant.
And if that checks out,
There's a window of opportunity there for the former unified middleweight champion to become a super middleweight champion. In the process, we'll see how this plays out. We'll see what develops.
that would add a little bit more depth to 168 pounds.
As there would be 3 world champions in the super middleweight division instead of just 2. I don't think that Franchon Cruz would be none too pleased to hear about it, assuming she hasn't heard about it already. I just don't know. What I will say is, as a fight fan, I could go for Franchon Cruz versus Aline Cedar-Ruz the same way I could go for Franchon Cruz versus Christina Hammer or Christina Hammer versus Aline Cedar-Ruz. I mean, you can mix and match the names. Any one of those fights is an intriguing fight. But
Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
because we don't even know for sure that this title really has gone vacant. We'll find out in the coming days and weeks. In other news, per a tweet from Michael Benson, Tommy Fury and Daniel Dubois will reportedly have their next fights on, get this, the Jake Paul versus Tyrone Woodley undercard, August 29th in the United States. It's claimed Fury has signed a 2-fight deal with Showtime, the idea being to eventually set up Jake Paul versus Tommy. And I don't really give a shit what happens with Jake Paul and Tyrone Woodley. I don't care if Jake knocks out Tyrone or if Tyrone knocks out Jake or if they both knock each other out. But with this breaking news, there is that much more pressure on young Jake Paul to take Tyrone Woodley out because in some ways he does have bigger fish to fry. It was believed in some circles that what they were fattening up Jake for was a Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight because Floyd did that exhibition with Jake's brother, Logan. And I don't know, maybe Floyd has had his fill of exhibition matches. Maybe he's done with the dog and pony show, and they've got to find someone else for Jake to fight. I don't think Dana White is going to make any of his fighters accessible to Jake, not the ones that are under contract.
He's not going to get Conor in the ring.
No, Conroy just lost to Dustin for the second time. He still got a rebound off of that, and that grotesque leg injury that he suffered. He's not going to be able to get Conroy in the ring or any of these other UFC guys, so that makes Tommy Fury,
That makes Tommy the next best thing.
who's got a bit of celebrity himself for being the younger brother of Tyson Fury and for his appearance on Love Island. Tommy Fury versus Jake Paul is a fight that could get a lot of eyes on it, but Jake, he's got to make it past Tyrone Woodley first, and we don't know if he's going to do that. We really don't. I mean, that entire situation there is very easy to understand. What I don't understand, what kind of threw me for a loop, is Daniel Dubois making an appearance on this card. For what reason would Daniel Dubois participate in this thing? We already knew that they were targeting a potential Trevor Bryan fight for Trevor's WBA Reggie belt. That much we knew. That much we were clued in on. But that he would be making an appearance.
Old Fish Eyes is loaning him out to Showtime?
That really caught me by surprise because up until this point, there was no hint of any dialogues happening between Frank Warren, Stefan Espinoza, and the people over there at Showtime. And if you think about the card with these additions in its entirety, you got Daniel Dubois versus Trevor Bryan. You've got Tommy Fury making an appearance on the card. You have Amandia Serrano versus Yamilet Mercado. And you have the main event, Jake Paul versus Tyrone Woodley. I have to say, and I'm being honest, this undercard seems stronger to me even than the undercard for Spence versus Pacquiao, which we talked about here on the channel. I mean, who the hell still gives a rat's furry fucking ass about Victor Ortiz versus Robert Guerrero? You can't be serious. Yordenis Ugas versus
What's-his-face?
Fabian Maidana. No, I have to say, comparatively, the undercard for Tyrone Woodley versus Jake Paul is a little bit more interesting. Yes, it is a little bit more intriguing. Before this announcement, Jake Paul versus Tyrone Woodley, that's something that any boxing snob, any hardcore boxing fan would have easily turned their nose up. But with this added news,
I'm intrigued.
I won't lie to you, I am interested. I mean, there's a chance that Tyrone Woodley finishes off Jake Paul. There is a chance, a mild chance. But even if he doesn't, the fact that this could lead to a Tommy Fury fight, well, that makes all of this that much more intriguing. So I'm actually contemplating purchasing this thing. I am curious as to why Old Fish Eyes is so deciding to lend out his guy Daniel Dubois to the people over there at Showtime to make an appearance here stateside. This will be his first time fighting abroad. This will be his first time fighting in the United States. Why is he allowing that to happen under the auspices of Showtime instead of on his own card over there in the United Kingdom on BT? There are some benefits to going about things this way. There are. I mean, you expose Daniel Dubois to an entirely different audience that may not be familiar with him on the undercard of a card that is set to get a lot of attention. And maybe it's not the attention, not all of it, of the hardcore boxing fan, as most of the people that are probably going to purchase this thing are either teens and tweens that follow Jake Paul or MMA fans who follow Tyrone Woodley. You know, this ain't a boxing card for your typical boxing fan. At least originally, it wasn't supposed to be. It is a bit more intriguing now. And because it's a bit more intriguing now, there are benefits to having Daniel make an appearance on this card. It will not only expose him to an American audience, but a rather large American audience, because for what it's worth, I do think this card is going to do good business. I do think they might break 1 million pay-per-view buys. I do. But it's strange the way all of this happened. We had no hint, no indication that the people over there at Showtime were in contact with the people over there at Queensbury, and they wanted to borrow one of their guys. I mean, who contacted who? Did Stefan Espinosa get in contact with Frank, or was it the other way around? Is Frank experiencing budget issues and he can't get his guy a fight date, so he decided to loan him out to someone else? I mean, what's really going on here? I don't know, but I do know that there are benefits to it.
I'm seriously considering purchasing this card.
Because its repercussions will reverberate beyond the singular card itself. If Daniel Dubois picks up that WBA Reggie belt, if both Jake and Tommy make it through their upcoming fights, it will lead to a showdown between them. And that is what people have been asking for. They've been asking for Jake to box with a real boxer. That's what Tommy Fury is.
I won't lie to you, that is interesting.
I might actually have to buy this thing. And finally, the boxing world is still reacting to the collapse of the Caleb-Plant versus Canelo-Alvarez undisputed super middleweight title fight. Former champion Ishii Smith added, "The ones who remain silent are usually the ones who are right. The ones who run to the media to get their point across are the ones who are usually full of shit." Learn that from FW. He never spoke on failed or successful negotiations. One side got their point across, one remained.
And who ran to the media first?
Caleb-Plant ran to the media first. Didn't take him very long to break his silence at all. Michael Monterio of Ring Magazine and the Neutral Corner added, "We've heard plenty from Plant's side regarding what went wrong, quote unquote, with the fight negotiations. Anyone else notice we haven't heard much from the other side? Makes you wonder if there's more to the sticking points, another side to it, than we're being told. Hashtag Canelo versus Plant." Ryan O'Hara of O'Hara Sports chimed in and said, "Just a business tweet here. If the Plant fight is truly dead, Canelo didn't lose out on $40 million. If he fights Bivol on DAZN for $35 million, he would lose only $5 million. If Plant got sick, he isn't guaranteed that $40 million.
That's assuming that's what led to the fight's collapse.
And I don't think that was it. At least not all of it, though it is a valid point that guaranteed means guaranteed. You're requesting that Canelo Alvarez come to your side of things, so it's on you to accommodate him the way any elite level boxer is supposed to be accommodated in that situation.
One of the anti-DAZN groupies chimed in.
E. Rose tweeted, "DAZN has been terrible for boxing. The sport is not the same without HBO," to which Dan Raphael tweeted, "Literally one of the dumbest things ever. I've watched 3 Canelo fights in 5 months on DAZN. As pay-per-views, they'd have cost me about $240. DAZN is $100 for an entire year, and you get way more than just 3 Canelo fights." And isn't that what I'm always telling you guys? It's common sense. It's value for money. The paying public will always choose to pay less instead of paying more.
It's basic arithmetic.
You're not actually getting more having the fight happen on Fox as opposed to the fight happening on DAZN. You're not getting any added benefit. All you're getting is a bigger bill.
An increasingly bigger bill that would get bigger fight by fight.
And why should it? When DAZN offered to pay for the fight, they offered to foot the bill. And for whatever reason, Canelo-Plant and his people, the fight happening on Fox was a sticking point. A sticking point that we now see was non-negotiable. It either happens on Fox or it don't happen. Because Caleb, he ain't crossing the street, is he?
He's happy to let the fight go by.
To Ryan O'Hara's previous point that Canelo Alvarez isn't losing out on $40 million, no, of course he's not. The only reason that there's $40 million or $50 million in the pot is because of Canelo Alvarez. Take him out of the equation, and there ain't 40 or 50 in the pot, and Caleb ain't no $10 million fighter.
He won't make that without Canelo.
Or anything close to it. So don't let the narrative pushers fool you. Canelo Alvarez isn't the one missing out on anything. It's Canelo-Plant. To former world champion Ishe Smith's point, that the feist guys that run to the media are usually the guys that are full of shit. I happen to agree with that because it didn't take Canelo-Plant very long to try and assign blame to the other party, the other team, try to clean things up.
Try and save face.
The Canelo Alvarez people didn't run to the media. They haven't been vocal about any of this at all, and it's because they don't have to be. When have you ever heard of a Canelo Alvarez fight collapsing due to minute details? Canelo Alvarez acquiesced to Gennady Golovkin's request for an improved split. He acquiesced very recently to Billy Joe Saunders' request for a bigger ring. The bottom line is, this is the first time you've actually ever seen something like this happen in association with Canelo Alvarez. His fights don't fall apart, his fights don't collapse, but bring a PBC fighter into it, and all hell breaks loose.
He's not the one that's missing out.
He can make that kind of money, comparable money to it, someplace else with someone else, and he's not the one that needs to run to the media to save face here, because he's not the one that's synonymous with big fights that fall apart, big fights that don't happen, in an effort to monopolize all the talent at a given weight, because that's what this is all about. This is all about Al Heyman and Bill Wanger being able to charge me and you more money for the same fight, the exact same fight, that could be happening on DAZN.
For far less.
Michael Monterio hinted that he believes there's more going on here than meets the eye, and I agree with him because Canelo-Plant's public statements in reference to the fight's collapse, he's not telling you what went wrong. He really isn't. He ran down an itemized list of concessions they made. So however ridiculous he wants to make all of that seem to me and you, these are still things you're saying you acquiesced to. So that couldn't have been what caused the fight to collapse.
The stuff you agreed to do ain't what killed the fight.
You're not actually telling us what killed the fight. You're not telling us what was in the fine print when those draft contracts went out that made Canelo Alvarez go the other way. If I had to guess what killed this fight, it's that the PBC and Fox wanted Canelo Alvarez for more than one engagement, because they're not pooling together all these resources for a one-off. They don't operate that way. My guess is that is what killed the fight, and that's what's not being said.
You tried to lock him in.